Andrew Johnston. I'm the president of ETS. I asked these poor souls if I could moderate this panel because this is one of the most interesting topics that we have. It is, if you are a great mind, institution, or doer, you understand how important getting from vision to reality is. And this is a conversation with not only subject matter experts from two leading different perspectives on the utility end, but one of our great leaders in thought leadership on this space from Black & Veatch. I just want everyone to get a chance to introduce themselves. They'll do that a little better than I will. But first, we're just going to ask for a name, a title, and sort of what you've learned so far in energy in your experience. This is a surprise, but what you've learned, what's the most important thing you've learned in energy? And how do you fit in the big data picture? So, Jennifer.
Okay, Jennifer James. I'm with Black & Veatch. I'm the director of Smart City Solutions. And what that really means is really what this whole presentation is about. How do all these smart technologies come together within a city context to improve efficiency, improve resilience, improve all those great things that we're going to talk more about. What I learned most from energy.
What's the most important thing that you've learned in the energy industry, in your years of working in the field?
I think that I've seen so much change in the industry, as we all have, and I think one of the really interesting things one of the panelists said yesterday is how slowly things changed and then how quickly things started to change. So the fact that we can do it, we can go through this transformation, we can make things happen, and we can make things happen quickly when we need to. We just need to get the right tools in place. So.
Does that apply to big data?
What's that?
Does that apply to big data?
Absolutely. That's what we're here to talk about. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Dave.
Hi, David Hulinsky, Black & Veatch, Director of Smart Grids. Been with Black & Veatch for approximately 17 years now. Some of the interesting things that we've learned over the years is being able to, what we're going to hear about is we're going to be talking about big data, we're going to be talking about communications, we're going to be talking about automation systems, and how we look at things is we look at things from a systems perspective. And by doing that, you can plan with the end in mind. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more today.
Appreciate it. Raiford.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Raiford Smith. I'm Vice President of Corporate Development and Planning at CPS Energy, or perhaps better said, Change Management. I have many of the new, interesting initiatives at CPS Energy. To me, the energy industry really, and the reason why I'm in the industry is because of the profound impact it has on everyone's life, especially mine, and I really love it. And to me, what I see is that we're cresting a wave of digitization and data, and that this is going to make a profound change in how we interact with customers, run our business, and do things safely and reliably and affordably. And for me, that's what I enjoy, is I enjoy being part of that.
Love it. Appreciate it. Jeff?
Good morning. I'm Jeff Nichols. I'm the Director for Information Management for the Zpryme Energy Utilities. That's San Diego Gas and Electric and Southern California Gas in Los Angeles. Things I've learned in the energy industry. I'm a relative newcomer. I've only been in the energy industry about 8 years. And I'd say if I had to pick one thing out, it's finding the balance. You know, I'm a technologist, an information technology person by training and experience. And we live in a world dominated by Moore's Law, Metcalfe's Law, rapid evolution and change. And we work in an industry that is basically built on a foundation of stability. This is the way we do it. Why do you want to mess with this? And so finding the balance between those two dynamics is probably the most important part of my job lately, and one of the most important things I've learned.
Gosh, honestly, I didn't even think about this as we were doing our prep calls, but I think about San Diego and its sort of political and regulatory landscape, and Texas and our political and regulatory landscape. We chose apples and pole vaulters to sort of introduce this discussion. But how perfect that you're in IT, you're really developing the change management. Not only there's a cultural part, but there's really an institutional integration. We have Smart Grid and Smart City. All of you come from these different perspectives, all talking big picture on big data. So let's get into it. So this is going to be a little different format because we do have this sort of complex picture. How do you sort of present the landscape of big data and then provide examples of how to do it right in an hour? So what we want to do is we want to do this really different. What we're going to do is we're going to have Jennifer essentially lay out first a vision, right, around what big data can do, how you can use it as a tool, a resource, and equipment, how you can create new job descriptions, new KPIs, align your strategic performance-based budgeting with this, give a vision around that. Then she's going to give a sense of that smart cities picture with that. And then we're going to pull into David talking about smart grid. All the while, these two guys have done it. So as we go into vision, we're going to hear, so how do you guys do that roadmap? How is it different? How is it similar? We have an IOU, we have an MOU. That's different in itself. Then as we go into smart cities, it's going to be the same thing. Do you even want to define smart cities? Are you guys going to get in trouble by saying you're a utility that deals with smart cities? Or are you embracing that call to arms? And then we're going to look at, really finally, smart grid. You know, where we started this road, where do we build the applications on this new platform that has emerged? And so at each of these points, Jeff and Raiford are going to be providing that color commentary, that forceful fact-based defense, and hopefully sometime occasionally sharing where you failed forward. Because a lot of folks in this room are probably going to be right there in a few years, or they've already been there. And of course, all the way through, at each one of these benchmarks, we'll give you a chance to ask one or two questions. So after vision, after smart cities, and after smart grid. So without further ado, Jennifer, I open it up to you.
Okay, so I'll start with the really big picture, which is just to put this whole big data conversation in context. So we hear a lot about smart grid, smart transportation, smart everything, and I think that the thing that really encapsulates that smart vision more than anything is the smart city concept. We've seen a lot of momentum in this concept for sure, and really but a lot of confusion as well, but what exactly does that mean? So at a very high level, you know, we all think of how all these critical systems within a city, the energy systems, the water systems, transportation, roads, buildings, all of these things really work more efficiently, they work more effectively, they are able to provide better services, but they also work together in an integrated way where there are new opportunities for value, but also, of course, a lot of challenges. So this big vision of this smoothly operating city with all the pieces connected is kind of at this very high level. Underscoring all of that is information and communications technology and ultimately getting into data and data analytics. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is the role of utilities within the smart city context. And Black & Veatch, we do a series of research reports every year. We recently published a report called Strategic Directions for Smart Cities and Smart Utilities. We looked at both of those markets and did some comparing and some contrasting. One thing that's pretty obvious to probably all of us here, and certainly to the cities, is that you can't have a smart city if you don't have smart water and energy systems. So that's foundational. The fact that the whole energy transformation has been happening, the smart grid modernization investments, that's really a precursor and an enabler in so many ways this bigger smart city journey that we're on. And cities have a lot to learn from the utilities within that regard. What we saw in this research is that 77% of the government and municipal people that we surveyed said that they believe utilities should play a leadership role, not just a support role within this whole smart city movement, which is, again, really an interesting, maybe not surprising finding, but a little bit different than maybe utilities actually think of that. So we'll talk to our panel of experts about that in a minute.
A quick question, you
Sure.
know, you say high ROI, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think of a hard ROI in terms, it's maybe a slightly different term, but when I talk to the utility folks that I trust as far as their own investments, they're saying if you can't get an ROI or an internal rate of return for 2 to 5 years, forget it, because 5 to 7 means 7 to never.
Right.
And so how do you package that up? Maybe we're going to go into this a little bit more, but I think that's something we're going to want to learn more from you about how to package up that into a real
Sure.
hard ROI.
And absolutely, and it's a challenge. That was one of the biggest challenges, certainly budget and how do you justify those investments when they're different than the traditional way projects were conceived and projects were budgeted. So that really is a challenge, and what does ROI even mean in this new world is really a question we like to explore as well. So, but moving on to data, ultimately all this smart stuff comes down to data. Data that's coming from sensors, the devices that are producing and using this data, the communications networks and systems that are able to carry the data. And certainly, ultimately, it's about all of this data being produced in all these different formats with this really high speeds in ways that we just didn't see or didn't have the ability to even handle in the past. So clearly with access to more and more data, the ability to bring data from many sources and many formats together is a huge opportunity for us, and it has to happen if we're going to really move towards the vision we talked about. But it's also a really big challenge, as most of the people in this room know. Fortunately, we have some people who have been grappling with that challenge for a while, so did want to that's just a little bit of an introduction, but I'd like to ask Raiford and Jeff a couple things. First of all, within the context of this smart city environment, starting at really high level, what do you guys see as the role utilities should play within this whole smart city vision?
Jeff, take it off.
Sure.
Or don't take it off.
Take
it off.
We'll keep it on.
Exit stage.
No, I mean, we number one, I think we see that the goals of municipalities and cities in this thing, called smart cities, and we'll talk about what smart cities might mean, I think, in a second. That the goals of leadership of cities and counties and states and the goals of the utility are precisely the same. Yes. Precisely the same. To serve that population well. To serve it well, whether it's in terms of energy delivery or in terms of making their lives better at all economic levels, through a variety of means. And the smart city phenomenon, for me, I have to kind of unpack the word smart a little bit. It means connected to me. A smart device or a smart unit of anything is connected, and it is somehow processing its environment and doing what it's supposed to do. And that's kind of the basis, I guess, for the Internet of Things, if you want to generalize it further.
Do you think there's a pushback to smart?
Yes, I mean the biggest pushback is probably ultimately privacy. Probably ultimately, when you have billions of things, billions of devices throwing off data to God knows where. And whether it is to the city or to the utility or some combination of other stakeholders, when you have billions of devices throwing off data about you and your location and your behavior and your consumption, and that's probably the biggest pushback. And we have to be really, really cognizant of that. We think we have to, not think, we know we have to be good stewards of that data. Well, yes. And so I just should try to keep it somewhat succinct. I think that the smart city phenomenon is about being a connected world, about using that information for the greater good, and that there are multiple stakeholders, including utilities, that have a clear and evident reason to be in the process, and that there are checks and balances already in place that help us keep our place. But probably new ones will be needed as we move along. And so, sorry for the long answer, Raiford.
No, that's good. I find it interesting. We spend a lot of time in these discussions talking about networks and interoperability and technology. And admittedly, I started off my career as a technologist and then lost my immortal soul as I became an Enron trader, and then further ruined myself when I became an attorney. But having said that, if we think about smart cities and utilities and the role they play, actually they're very similar to the technology, which is it's about partnerships. It's about collaborations. It's about creating that interoperable network of partners that can help you deliver that for the community as a whole. Utilities have a very unique niche for us, I believe, that allows us to play that connector. And in thinking about that, in San Antonio with CPS Energy, we've done some really unique things with our new energy economy partners to bring them to San Antonio. Certainly with our investments, our partnerships with the Build San Antonio Green, what we're doing with solar, what we're doing with new products, this to me is a great example of how a utility can play that catalyst and help bring together all the right partners to really transform a community.
I know this isn't the panel for it, but Power from Partners.
Right, exactly.
Please share. I mean, this is really, it is a smart story. So please just
So
snapshot.
Well,
and it's a collaboration too.
Absolutely. One of the things we saw with solar is that there's some traditional problems that everyone continues to wring their hands about how do they solve. And it's really some great dialogue between Jason, myself from PowerFin, and certainly with what we're partnered with.
Actually, didn't know he was there.
So yeah,
That's full disclosure.
what we discovered is that some of the two key barriers that customers had was really either the roof itself or the financing of the solar itself. And we thought, what better way to really help customers adopt solar than to find ways to overcome those two barriers. In doing it, we are using that smart infrastructure to do it. We are putting in smart inverters as part of the program. We're treating it as a bundled biddable asset that we can use. More
senses, more nodes.
Absolutely, and that really plays on our three-part strategy, which is to build out a digitally censored and controlled plane. Right? That gets you the foundation to be able to have the control that you need to offer new products and services. Second, build a communications and telecommunications infrastructure to federate your data and make it available wherever, whenever needed. And then third, use the data that comes from that to develop new products and services, new capabilities, new analytics. All three of these tie together, and they are transformative.
That's an opportunity multiplier, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, you have to really, at the end of the day, make products and services that people want. You have to find a business model that can pay for it, and you have to have the right operations that can implement it.
You need to fit around what the customer wants, not what you want them to want.
Exactly. So you have to start all your planning, everything you do from the customer back to the utility, and that is the transformative effect.
He said it, I did.
And there's a fourth thing. You got to have a regulatory environment that allows the participants, in the market to actually operate at a reasonable pace.
Absolutely.
And that's a tough thing. Energy is regulated for good reasons. It's a model that's worked. But again, as we go into a distributed energy world where utilities are looking to kind of rethink themselves and establish themselves in an evolving, changing economy, I forget who said it at the session just previous to ours. Someone said, if utilities really are 10 years behind the technology and the regulators really are 10 years behind that, which I don't believe, then we're in trouble, because we can't afford a 20-year lag. So, all of us should be working to kind of reduce that lag time between, again, the stability producing effect of regulation, which is generally a good thing, but the change factors in economy and distributed energy and technology.
I want to pull up real quick. Dave, is this collaboration story a zero-sum game? Can you only have one partner?
No, it's multiple partners, and I like that from a collaboration perspective. On the city side as well as the utility side, as well as from a system side. So from the technical aspects, from the public aspects, it's got to be an integrated solution.
We have our vision. I apologize. We want to get into the second part so we have enough time to have all these questions. Think about your questions, though, at the next one. Do we already have a question? Was that quick? No. Okay. So if we have time, we'll have a break after phase 2, which is using data analytics to deliver value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you guys both got into some of the opportunities around this whole transformation and big data and how do you really start to leverage it from a high level? The way we look at it, it's really the analytics, the analysis of that data that really puts the smart in the smart city system, the smart utility system, whatever that is. So from a high level, what is it that we see as being the real opportunities around data analytics? Clearly, it's where you really start to get the value from those investments that you've made. It's also a way to provide, we talk a lot about situational awareness, situational intelligence, I think takes that to a next level. So what's going on now? Better informing future decisions. So how do we better plan for this future? And ultimately, how do we adapt to things as they're changing by having data to continue to provide feedback and look towards the future? So informing smarter decisions, ultimately it comes down to minimizing disruptions, providing higher quality service, all of those good things. And one of the things that I'm curious to get your thoughts on is this idea of it be an opportunity to sponsor collaboration. So through the new tools around data visualization, there's a lot of ability to have a lot more interaction with data. There's a lot more opportunities to kind of infuse, get data in front of, get concepts in front of people in more interactive ways, and also get feedback from people. So I'm curious, before we even get into some of the examples of data analytics, are you seeing that as an opportunity area as well from, we talked about collaboration, but the ability to sponsor some of that collaboration?
Sure. So I'll start. And I would say absolutely. But one of the fun aspects of change management, which comes with that collaboration, is so much of the utility industry always expects that the packaged good that they are purchasing, not only it is perfect,
it's customized too.
It's and absolutely customized.
Just to your specifications.
Right, and that 10 other people have already done it and can prove that it is value. If we want to get out of that paradigm, right, to really get ahead on the innovation cycle, we have to build the kind of culture that says, look, we're willing to take calculated risks, and we know it's not going to work perfectly. I can't tell you how many times in my career that we've tried something different, and every one of them broke. And that's okay, because the ultimate thing that we got out of it was always far better than what we had we never tried. And that, I think, is the key aspect that we all are struggling with, not just with our regulators, with our infrastructure, and with our partners, is our partners want to do it, but they too can be gun shy. We all want to innovate and grow and change because we see the opportunity. It's having the courage and the culture to allow you that sort of iterative prototyping to get to the right space that really helps us win.
Interesting. So sort of taking what you're good at and getting great at that instead of saying, I stink at this, I just need to learn how to manage this. So how do you, Jeff, maybe give us a story from your experience and more broad experience, you don't even need to be in energy, but where, that partnership, building something in partnership, leaving those who are expert at what they're expert at to do what they're expert at so they can bring that into the conversation and build around that so that each partner is allowed to do what they're best at and feed the group. Is there any examples from that you can pull up?
Maybe I'll twist your question around a little bit, Drew, in the sense that we fully intend to be strong and great partners for the areas that we serve with our utilities in terms of data and and managing data. Providing data to the right stakeholders and so on. But we've had to, we're still in the process of getting our game together internally, frankly. We started our so-called big data journey inside the utilities about 3 years ago. And
was that through the cloud or was that through some
No, pretty much all on-prem in the beginning. Okay. Cloud is coming pretty rapidly. But I've been lately pitching this concept, this idea that is increasingly getting traction internally. That one of the things we're great at is asset management. Yes. But we think of assets. We're generally great at. We're certainly in IT we're good. I think in OT we're great in terms of asset management. But we think of assets. The substations, the big transformers, the wires, the poles. So we're really amazing at asset management. So let's manage data like an asset. Let's talk about the data-driven utility of the future as opposed to the experience-driven utility. And so we're talking about managing data as an asset. One of the first things you do if you're trying to manage something as an asset is you keep track of it. You've got an inventory. So guess what? We didn't have anybody in the company who was looking at the data across the entire company to say, how much do we have, and where is it? And ultimately, what are the controls around it, other than in the very, very narrow places where we had really tight control over data, like NERC-CIP systems and SOC systems and so on. Long story short, I took that charter on for my group, and I was really shocked to learn just this last quarter that I didn't really think that we would hit a petabyte of data that we're managing inside our utility, anytime soon. We're at 5 going to 10 pretty quickly, petabytes. And for those of, when I'm explaining this to people internally, a petabyte's a really big number. It's, the easy explanation is imagine a file cabinet full of paper, a 4-drawer file cabinet full of paper. 20 million of those is about a petabyte. So, this started with with smart meters, but now we have, more and more sensors on the network, more and more requirements to keep information and manage it. So, kind of long story short, Drew, I think that we are creating the internal collaboration environment around data and data management and managing data as an asset. And it's not just a technology thing. I learned the hard way. We can tell a story later about data quality and data governance. Wow, what a mess that is. And we are learning to do it well for ourselves.
Yep.
Then we will be able to do it extremely well for our external partners.
Well, let's be honest, modern governance and accounting is driving all this, right? I think it
is the kickstart.
It is.
It is the kickstart.
Dave, this is perhaps a segue into this data analytics conversation Jennifer's bringing up, and Raiford and Jeff are totally validating. So
Right.
this asset management conversation and sort of strategic performance-based budgeting around your capital investment. Oh yeah, and sorry so I don't know if you know, but Devo from the 80s, Mark Mothersbaugh, the founder of the band. Yeah, you a big fan? Okay, good. So he was here for South by, and he brought this original installation of quirky music. Of course, they didn't let us know that when we reserved the venue. So
bucket list,
fun times, it's creative.
Bucket list item, we're finally on stage with Mark Mothersbaugh.
There you go. We just need our little hats and our glasses. We've been good.
We'll do that next time.
So back to I heard Jeff being like, that is funky music. But the asset management conversation and that capital investment, like using data analytics
Right.
to really get strategic and performance-based in your budgeting around those two things is a real opportunity, right?
Absolutely, and by beginning with evaluating the data and what you want to do with it,
Yes.
provides the guidance of how to implement that smart city, smart
Are you talking
smart
about
utility.
KPIs for the numbers, or are you talking about building new ones, or are you talking about, this goes way beyond JD Power, customer satisfaction, Katie,
Right.
fill in the blank, right? So what are you talking about? Are you talking about new KPIs? Are you trying to socialize new nomenclature? Or are you actually saying, hey, no, that resilience score from back in the day, let's keep it, right?
Right.
So what are you saying?
What I'm saying is by utilizing the data, by having understanding what you want to do with the data,
Yes.
only there it provides the guidance, and we'll be talking about that in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's from that systems approach. Understanding what you want to do with the data provides the guidance of the intelligence that you put out there on your grid and the type of information that you want to be able to gather.
Rayford, you're building.
Yeah, so
You're building.
there's one word of caution, which is, I call it the curse of the use case. And what it is that we all sit around thinking about what is it we want to invest in? We want to do a thing,
What
right?
problem do we want to solve?
Right, and so we want to pick a thing to do, and so then we go out and we buy equipment and we use data to do the thing. And so often what it is it's a very brittle thing that we just bought. Because once we have it, then we decide we want to do something else with it. And oh, by the way, that's going to cost a lot of money, and you've got to change it up.
For your new managed service contracts.
Exactly. And so my word of caution when thinking about data, analytics, networking, really all of this, how it all plays together, is while you have to be mindful of the use cases that are going to pay the bill,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have results that are tangible and beneficial, why are you doing it? But don't get caught in that use case death spiral, which locks you into systems, infrastructure, or use cases and without an eye
Antiquated
to...
by the time they install.
Absolutely, without an eye to, hey, I'm not sure what the next thing is I'm going to need to do. Make sure your strategy, your technologies, your choices give you that flexibility as you move
Yeah.
forward.
That's a great example of failing
And you-
forward. It's sort of figuring out where, as you're doing it, of, hey, this is a good opportunity to share with the audience. Thank you for that, Rayford. Appreciate that. Jennifer?
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, if you look at some of the numbers, again, from this is also from the Strategic Directions Report, and this was from the utility audience. What are some of the ways that data analytics are being provided? What are the areas that they could provide the most benefits? It's interesting that asset management came up as the top thing, which Jeff has talked about, but if you look at a lot of these things, they're not specific use cases. It's about capital investment prioritization. It's about evaluating options. It's about better risk management. There are some things around, billing and collections, some things, specific things around customer service, but a lot of those things were about bigger sets of improvement, not specific examples. That said, I would love to hear some examples of some of the things that Jeff and Raiford have been doing with analytics and where you're really seeing some of the benefits.
And before we get that, let's just get a quick hand raise from utility folks. Are you guys working in this space right now? Are you having these challenges? Are you having, good, encouraging signs. All right, keep going, please.
So I'll give you two quick stories, and I'll make them quick. One success story, one, Drew's favorite, a fail-forward kind of story. The success story is on the customer analytics side, and we wanted to empower our call center agents quite a bit better. Good. And we, we look at that as a, it's sort of an old school touch point with customers, but it's still a touch point. And as we continue to kind of fine-tune our digital online touch point and presence with customers, we wanted to make sure that people who do want to call in, and surprisingly there are a lot of people who want to call in for various reasons, that they make that a great experience. And so we took about a year, and we did something called a customer analytics system for SDG&E, and the end result was what's called a next best offer or next best option. So in real time, when a customer calls in, the system behind the scenes assembles data from our meter reading system, from social media, from every previous interaction we've ever had with that customer, from demographics data, and up on the screen pops 2 or 3 things that the system judges to be the next best option for that customer.
It took you only a year to cross-reference all this stuff?
Only a year. That's a big word.
No, honestly, like legitimately.
The integration, frankly, wasn't the hard part. It was,
the organizational, getting everyone to work on the same
organizational change management, and so that was a success story. We're continuing to build on that. We're continuing to integrate new streams of data, and we're also going to be using some of that same technology to provide online service, in the same fashion.
But the human's at the center of that story. I mean, that customer service person needs remote decision making.
They love it.
Situational awareness and distributed logic, and you give them the choice to serve that person.
There was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that the system would produce kind of nonsense results. Tell a person who doesn't have a pool pump to buy a variable speed pool pump. It doesn't do that. We've pushed all that out of the system.
Awesome.
The other side of the coin, and this is something that, as a technologist early in the journey to analytics, I immediately focused on the technology platforms and standardizing them and kind of herding the cats in a single direction, establishing some high-speed internal platforms, one open system, several proprietary. We won't talk about all the brands. That's where I started, and we did a project, and we did it really rapidly for our gas operations folks, where we did an analytics solution for them around compliance and maintenance. And something they really needed. They needed rapid reporting on how are they doing in terms of compliance and maintenance of the gas system. We did this project. We produced integrated 5 or 6 data sources. We did it in 90 days. We produced 5 or 6 new reports. It was just, by my standards, a huge success story. I went to the meeting with the internal clients expecting to find a bunch of happy people. I found a bunch of angry, unhappy people. And what had happened was we had this shiny, bright new system that was exposing lots of data that had previously only been looked at by a few subject matter experts in the trenches. And the word I got was, what were you thinking? We now have these reports that have nonsense data, crummy data. How could you show this crummy data to our bosses? I'm deer in the headlights. And, so it really, really brought home the fact that, okay, it's time to think about data quality and data governance, not technology, because that's what's going to make this all work long term. And so since then, we've had a very, very strong effort internally on those two things. So I learned the hard way there, so one of the, I guess the lesson I keep talking to people about is one of the things that advanced analytics and visualization systems gives you is complete transparency. you and everybody else inside the company. Complete transparency into the actual quality of your underlying data, and it's probably not a pretty picture. Those are my stories.
Appreciate it. So before we get into the next part of this, does anyone want to share their story? Oh, yeah, please.
I have a question rather.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sharing the story for Jeff.
And share who you are.
Yeah, my name is Zpryme, and I'm a data scientist at Comet. And as you might imagine, we're running into much of the same issues of gathering the petabytes of data, holding them in. I want to know a little bit about your experience. So you, as I understand, you hold your data in-house?
In general, yes.
Right.
So that is changing.
You also have the processing power needed to analyze and crunch all of this data? Because those are the things.
Are the pipes big enough?
So far, yes. And you know, this, but I will say, when I look at the future, you know, we have a Hadoop cluster that we are building upon. We also, again, have 2 or 3 proprietary, I'll call them high-performance analytics platforms. And so far internally, we have the capacity to solve the problems we're trying to solve. When I really look at the web scale companies, whether it's Microsoft Azure or whether it's Amazon Web Services or, you know, pick your, we will not be able to keep up with them in terms of scaling out our capability. So it's safe to predict, given all the other governance around data, that I believe we will be moving much of this processing to the cloud over time.
Do you have internal team of experts that are able to work with the data and, you know, they know the tools like R, Python, you know, the data science tools? Do they rely on the existing libraries of the algorithms, or do they use your capabilities in-house, or do you more kind of outsource it towards?
Good question.
We do both. There is, in my experience, an incredibly steep, sharp pyramid of expertise. At the very top is people like yourself, you know, real data scientists who understand, you know, statistics deeply. They understand the numbers in the data. They have the creativity and sometimes the ability to actually use programming tools to, you know, test hypotheses, test new algorithms. There's very, very few of those people, so we often will go out for those. Then you have your expert business analysts, which we find we have more of than we thought. You know, they're not quite at the same level as the people at the top of the pyramid in terms of their technical ability, but they really understand their business, and they understand, you know, that, you know, so much that you know, I'm marrying up our technologists and our IT people with them. And then we have the, you know, the business users that the new visual displays are really aimed at. But Raiford, what's your experience there?
Yeah, so we made some conscious decisions in terms of our architecture and our solutions. I like to say we're architecturally specific and vendor neutral because of this curse of the use case and the fact that the proprietary systems, honestly, the human capital I can find who are trained on one of them, maybe I can find 5 of them in the US, and they all happen to be working for other utilities, and they're all paid pretty well. Unicorns. Right, exactly. They are a unicorn. However, if I go find somebody who's got our experience, Java, C, there are a host of those people, and they don't necessarily work in the utility industry. There are far more of them. And so for us, what we did when we hired in 2 data scientists, we hired people that didn't have a utility background per se. We did implement a Hadoop system. Ours is in the cloud, and we are using open source and standards-based tools really to attack the data problem.
R, Python.
Right, exactly. And
suspects. And again, totally not energy specific.
Absolutely.
If you're good in grad school,
right,
you can work in this field. That's a cool thing for people that are 20 to 30 to know. I mean, like, you don't need to be technical specific.
The big change management issue for us, and I think it was like y'all, we had the same thing. We went out and we started to find 10 use cases across our entire company. We built roadmaps for all of them, and then we ran smack into let's go get the data to go build out the first initial ones. And lo and behold, it was awful. The data is in a million different systems. Once we pulled it in, we had more data quality problems, and the timeline began to grow and grow. And unfortunately, our CEO is in the room, and so while she's here, I can ask her for more money. But the issue isn't so much that, you know, a lot of people are focusing on that. And, you know, I always say I like to do it right. right and take a little more time.
Yes.
Rather than rush and get a bad product.
Yes.
What we're finding is it's uncovering so many other change management issues where
Those are offshoots. Those are
Absolutely.
opportunities that you didn't even, the unknown unknowns as Rumsfeld
Right.
once
Right.
said.
We had one person said, on one of the first use cases we picked was predicting to customers that might be good to enroll in a particular program, which is a precursor to the one you did, which is we wanted to get that right so we could do that one.
Yeah.
And people said, well, you don't care about that. It's a small program. And I said, no. The whole point of this one is to figure out how to do something simple, how to do it easy.
Replicate it, scale it.
Right, and then it grows into, which is what the purpose of the roadmap shows, is that you go from this to that to other products and services and really grow that capability. But that is a huge change management undertaking inside the utility to get us to understand that it's not okay, I've done it and now I can go home. It becomes basically the way of life, and it is not a 3-year project or a 5-year, it is forever.
It's foundation.
Right.
Interesting. This is a perfect segue. I mean, really, what you guys have just laid out are sort of that forceful fact base for really moving forward with that vision to reality. And I think we're at sort of section 3 of this conversation. And Dave, if you don't mind, sort of tell us about enabling this reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to talk about the data analytics and so forth and the drivers that essentially then provides the roadmap of how to actually implement it. And energy is the foundation to developing the smart city, and it's the fundamental building block. The smart grid concept is essentially very simple. It's the more we know about something, the better off we are. We can be able to make informed decisions, accurate decisions, and be able to proactively improve the performance to the overall smart grid. The modern smart grid is complex, but it can be broken down into simple components, as you see here on this slide.
This is a great slide, by the way.
It's got information management, there's generation, there's transmission, and distribution. And those are essentially the components of a utility. That's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But the overlay is what makes it intelligent. The overlay of computer automation, the communications, as well as the information management, the control management systems, is what makes it intelligent.
So dumb wires on top of smart poles doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. I've heard it talked
Yeah.
about. I've heard,
But by having that overlay allows it to become more intelligent, and it's the foundation to a smart city. Because therefore, by having an intelligent grid, enables utilities to be able to identify where a transformer has failed, to be able to reroute the power automatically and keep the lights on for businesses and homes. It's very exciting to see how a utility is the foundation block to a smart city, and by looking at it from a systems perspective, helps you keep the end in mind. So essentially, the foundation is right there, and it provides numerous benefits. By having a smart utility, a smart city type environment, allows users to be able to control the power throughout the day, and the amount of power that they use. They also enables, potentially someday, customers to be able to actually choose their own power supplier, which is pretty unique. The economic benefits, we were just talking about that, some of the case studies.
Right.
There's been studies done over the U.S., over $80 billion worth of economic losses occur each year due to power outages.
Outages.
Right.
Yeah, that was SNC was just saying that earlier today.
Right. So by having a smart city, or having a city that has a smart utility, provides benefits, businesses, and economic advantage by locating in those cities that have that.
And what a true point to the pulse of what a real city is the people, it's the places, it's the performance of those policies. And so when you don't, and it really, there's a smart city story also, because the city's responsibility is public health, safety, and welfare. So as we look at reliability and quality as an underpinning for that, I mean, honestly, this goes into so many different questions, but how do you look at this with an eye towards serving beyond the utility, I guess? So how does this become a tool, an operational tool that people can use in, by the way, Black Beach, I loved your water report recently. I mean, you guys are seeing this in a lot of different spaces. Bring it all under one umbrella.
It's about the customer, and the customer is, the people that live within the city. And by providing them a better quality of life, giving them the option to be able to control the power, to be able to give them a choice to the type of power suppliers that they use, very similar to how we choose phone and TV services today. By providing that capability is enormous. So, and how do you get there is what we were just talking about, the data analytics, the drivers, but then you have to look at it from a systems perspective.
Yeah.
You can't only look at it from the data analytics, but you have to look at it from a complete system, because a modern smart grid is just not one manufacturer that you go to and bam, you got it done for a DMS system, an EMS system, and the different technologies. You probably have to work with 20 to 30 different manufacturers in order to build that complete system.
And they say that mobile, and sorry, Hewlett-Packard Capgemini did a study in this early spring that said 8 to 10 times the mobile data usage between 2015 and 2020. Meanwhile, sort of the energy data center crisis is going to be coming to an end. So we need to sort of mind the gap around
Right.
this data and the services that they can enable, which is interesting because also data and comms could be that truly the thing that unleashes all this next wave of innovation, right? So help us understand how enabling this smart vision gets the utility, gets the city owning that, so that when Google comes in and they're like, hey, we want to put fiber, that's great, use ours, managed service our contract, you know?
Yeah,
and get a 30-year lease from us instead of the other way around.
And that's interesting. You know, like you mentioned, fiber, you know, service providers building fiber in communities, being able to share those, that infrastructure and so forth is very intriguing, because it's a lot about capital cost. And if that capital cost can be shared, you know, the ideas and the realities can be met sooner. And as you can see that on the next few slides, just quickly go through them because I know we're short on time. But looking at it, things from a system.
We have 10 minutes.
We got 10 minutes? So
Yeah.
by looking at things from a system perspective, from a planning approach, looking at it, either you can look at it as a one-time build, or you can do it from a phased approach. And by having that plan, by looking at it with the end in mind, drives that systems approach. And as you can see the next few slides, you can see it can be actually broken down into three components. You've got the intelligence that's put out in the field from the automation perspective. You got the communication aspects, the drivers. No more can communications, you know, in order for communications to support the intelligent grid, it's no more narrowband, it's a broadband application. Wireless technologies, fiber technologies, in order to bring that data back to the control center and so forth.
And great, so we have questions for discussion, topic 3, but how about we pull up here, we do have about 10 more minutes, and we've had a lot of, Alper, yeah, please, share. And share who you are, sorry.
Alper, I'm from Johnston. Do you see any tagging models, standard tagging models, before you do the analytics, before getting the data to simplify? And do you see any push for analytics on the edge devices?
So the short answer is yes. The longer and slightly more nerdy answer would be, you know, realistically, what we're seeing isn't just a move from centralized generation to distributed energy. We're seeing a move from the use of data in a centralized way to a distributed one. And what's primarily driving that is the customer and those distributed energy resources themselves. As you start to have those generating resources at the edge of your network, the requirements for safety, security, reliability, and customer engagement necessitate having that data and those analytics closer and closer to the customer at the edge, which means that if you don't federate that data on a common platform the moment it touches your network, so that you have the flexibility to put analytics wherever, you're ultimately creating another brittle infrastructure. At Duke Energy and at CPS Energy, we are using a thing called the Open Field Message Bus to solve that very problem.
Very important.
What it does is it allows network data or data from literally anything to be put under a common semantic and a common structure at the edge of the network. So now we can place analytics at the edge, at the substation, with the customer, or in our data center. It gives us infinite flexibility to not be trapped by our use case, and to use our network, our assets, our resources far more efficiently. This isn't a problem that we instantly see much of today unless you deal with microgrids and renewables integration at the edge. Other than that, though, what's happening is we see more and more of it coming as those penetration levels get higher.
So just to tag on to that, this is an area where Raiford and I do agree a lot, which is, processing does need to move to the edge. We don't, the old model is, bring everything back to the data center, process it, and send the results back to the field,
Second
back to the
industrial
operations
revolution,
center.
centralize everything, distribute it.
Right, and so I really do believe that whether it's analytics or whether it's real-time decision making,
Security.
Ultimately it's moving to the edge. But to your point of tagging, that's an interesting question. We actually are thinking a lot about tagging data lately. There's tagging data from just if you think of it from a network perspective, we're moving all of our data very soon, both OT and IT data across a single MPLS network. MPLS network is by definition tagged and flowed data, and so we'll be able to give priority, for example, to SCADA data over the IP MPLS network versus, people watching the Final Four on ESPN across our network, which they're not supposed to, but it still happens. And so there's tagging that happens there. There's also tagging that we're looking at in terms of both file and data tagging in terms of the confidentiality and sensitivity of data. That we're starting that. We're not very far along with that. We have policies for labeling data, but the implementation of said policies has been very, very tough. And then finally, when you think about tagging data from an information management point of view, you think of things called taxonomies. What do we call a customer and what are its attributes? What do we call a pole and what are its attributes, and how do we represent that in our information systems? So we're spending a lot of time in that respect in terms of standardizing the classification and taxonomy of the data that actually starts in our application systems with maybe crummy quality, and by the time we migrate it to our standard data stores, data lake, we have standardized it somewhat. So really interesting question on the tagging.
Is there any open source initiative for that tagging models that you have seen out there, or you're just doing it internally?
We purchased an off-the-shelf, what's called a utility data model. And like we do with many things we purchase off the shelf, we are busily customizing it so it'll be usable to almost nobody else. And
Because you built it, and you guys have that right.
Yeah, but I don't know of an open source model for for data models that really works in our industry.
Yeah, so I don't either. I know we built a rudimentary data dictionary based on our initial use cases, and I know it's already wrong. I know we'll have to come back and revisit it a whole bunch more. I've looked at this a lot. I don't see anything. I mean, we've got SIM as some standards. You've got C12 for meter data. I mean, you've just got a whole host of them, and that
certain subsets you've got standardization.
Right, and that was the problem we were facing, and why we did OpenFMB was we said, look, we don't know. Let's just see if we can bolt on all of these things and find ways to structure it at least in some common format.
Standardize the next layer up.
Right, exactly, the logical layer, right, exactly.
Of data.
Right.
So this is not going to be a technical question, but it is a personal question. So I'm a product of the city. Public schools, public everything, right? And so I see the baby to the grandmother living in a city, and the public health and safety and welfare being so important. Why do they care two hoots about big data? What problem is that solving for them? Why are you guys working so hard on this?
So
for them.
I used to work with the chief of police, and he would say the fastest way to anarchy is to turn off power.
And taxes buy you civilization too.
Right. I mean,
Oliver Wendell Holmes.
You just look at it. When the power goes out, it isn't a kind of a nice, orderly, structured economy that we all live in. It's chaos, right?
It's public safety.
Exactly. Right. It's not just public safety. It's welfare. It's everything. Right? Falls apart. Energy is the critical component that kind of makes our society go. And for us, and why smart cities, why our partnerships through an energy economy, what we're trying to do in San Antonio, are so important is really thinking about that holistically. Is we are that critical linchpin in the economy that really needs to kind of enable this capability. If we don't get this right, all the other things fall apart.
What are you creating that's invaluable then?
Well, to me, it's a resilient, reliable, and affordable infrastructure that is flexible to meet customer demands, not just today or yesterday, but tomorrow. Because so much of what's happening isn't just, hey, look, here's a cool widget. It's, hey, the customers yesterday expected to call up and tell me when power was out. Today, they expect me to know. Tomorrow, they want me to just proactively fix it.
Right.
Modern governance accounting.
And
Again,
that's,
the Kickstart.
and that's to the concept of pushing the data out to the edge, making those decisions out the edge, having distributed control systems to be able to proactively restore power before anybody knows that it's actually went out.
Right.
Or de-energize power, such as in California because of wildfires, being able to de-energize those power lines before they actually hit the ground.
No, I think that's the best. That's probably the best answer. I mean, to your hypothetical, grandmother or low-income participant. Yeah, I really don't think they care about anything at all about big data, and they probably shouldn't. We're talking about the internal wheels and gears and grease here that make the machine run.
Yes.
What they care about
That's
is
fair.
the results, just
Right.
as to what
That's
David
fair.
said, which is
what's
they
the
want
thing that
reliable
serves?
power and they want it at the best possible cost. And the difficulty sometimes is explaining kind of the complexities of how power is sold in a region and the cost. But even in regions like ours, where we're an IOU, we have what's called an obligation to serve. We have programs that basically if you cannot afford the power that you're getting, we have programs to help you, and they're very, very effective programs. And we have also multiple channels to deliver that information to people who need help. And so we take our obligation to serve and ultimately our core mission really, really seriously. So I don't think they care about data, but they definitely care about the end service.
Yeah, and just to add, to broaden it out again to the city context, so beyond even the energy, which is critical to all of this stuff, what people care about is that they can get where they want to go quickly, they can get there efficiently, the air they breathe is clean. The fact that they know when the public transportation is going to be on time and when it's not. And so just all of those things that we interact with and we do every day, whether it's transportation, whether it's accessing basic services, or whether it's being able to have a much more interactive and maybe deeper social exchange with different people and different groups. I think all of those things are part of this.
This is an underpinning.
It's improving
this
the
is an
overall,
underpinning of the platform economics.
it's improving the overall quality of life. Essentially.
Ultimately is what it's about.
Interesting. So it's interesting. So over the course of this, we've been hearing things like silicon is replacing carbon on the grid. That connectivity is driving this, but also it's driving that governance and accounting, and it's driving that hard ROI we were talking about. Does anyone have a last question? We have about 2 minutes left. Oh, now we have 15. Perfect timing, guys. Bang up job earlier. Sorry, you raised your hand in the back last, please. Lady, sorry. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm a lady. Okay, Jane Peters, Energy Savvy. So Energy Savvy, we do customer data analytics and customer engagement. Actually, with the CPS Energy with online energy audit. It's exciting to see lots of CPS associated. But my question on the vendor side is, some of our most exciting technology requires customer data and customer usage data, and so we often encounter as a barrier to providing services and helping utilities see value those data quality issues that both of you mentioned. Although it sounds like your utilities are really far ahead of some utilities that I work with. Data quality issues, and then just inability to access the data, and of course following all the right security protocols. So question is, how can vendors help in that? Because I think we all want better data so we can innovate together. Or is this a problem or an issue that utilities really just have to solve on their own in terms of, or is there ways that we can help together? That data quality and data accessibility.
Sort of building with your partners, collaborating. It's not a zero-sum game.
So I was at a NARUC conference once, and I was posed a similar question by some regulators, and it may be why I work at a municipal-owned utility now. But my answer was, I would love a return on and of data. Because think of it, we mentioned this earlier, that so much we think about poles and wires, and we try to be good stewards of it in terms of asset management. Utilities, in terms of their partnerships, though, they still don't understand that data is the most valuable asset. And if they could, it's admittedly a bit tongue-in-cheek to say I want a return on and of on my data, but we need to find a way to be able to monetize that.
That's the word.
And if you can monetize that.
Internalize and then monetize.
Right, and I don't mean that it's that suddenly your stock price goes up because your EPS is better or because you're making more money. It's as much about, hey, look, I can run my assets more efficiently, I can avoid customer outages, I can do so much across my business, risk management. We as an industry need to understand that. We're looking for ways to help understand that and make that partnership. To the extent that vendors, other partners can help us see that and help us do that, I think that's a win-win scenario for all of us.
Guys, I apologize. I literally could listen to this for another 30 minutes, but these people need to eat. I want to thank you guys so much. I want to thank y'all for great questions. We have lunch. It's next door at the Paramount. You can get your food. But you guys have these panelists here, and you can literally hold them from leaving the door. So feel free to talk to them, but the panel is over. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.